Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic Goblin noise!
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game takes place at GAMERZ CO-OP in the West Island of Montreal. We have Roxy rejoining us with her Alesha deck, keeping Luxury Suite, Liliana Heretical Healer, Inspiring Vantage, Teferi's Protection, Bajuka Bog, a Durgar Hedgemage, and a Grand Abolisher. Armin is playing Tatyova, keeping a Dryad Arbor, an Island, a Colony Heart Expedition, Mystical Tutor, Misty Rainforest, and Crop Rotation. Pat is back playing Zacama, keeping Final Fortune, Wheel of Fortune, Mana Crypt, Garruk Wildspeaker, Forest, and Basalt Monolith. There's another Andrew for the channel playing his blue and white Taigam, keeping Treasure Cruise, Foil, Lightning Greaves, Ponder, Preordain, and 2 islands. Andrew wins the die roll and starts us off. Andrew draws and plays an island, passing. Roxy plays a Luxury Suite. Armin plays a Dryad Arbor. And Pat plays a Forest and casts Mana Crypt. He then pays 3 for Basalt Monolith and passes back to Andrew. Andrew plays an island and casts his Lightning Greaves. Roxy plays Inspiring Vantage, passing turn. Armin plays out an island and pays 2 mana for a Colony Heart Expedition. Pat avoids the damage from his crypt and casts Farseek, passing while searching. Andrew plays a Plains and pays 1 blue for a Ponder. He looks at his top 3 and puts them back before drawing 1, and he casts a Sensei's Divining Top, passing. Roxy plays a Swamp and casts Liliana Heretical Healer. Armin plays a Misty Rainforest, which as it comes in puts a counter onto the expedition. He then passes to Pat. Pat loses his Mana Crypt roll, taking 3 from it. He draws and casts Garruk Wildspeaker. Garruk is then upticked and untaps 2 lands, and Pat plays out a Burgeoning and then a Mountain. He pays 3 mana for a Wheel of Fortune, and the table discard their hands and draw a fresh 7. Pat then passes. At the end of turn, Andrew activates his Sensei's Divining Top, looking at his top 3. Andrew draws and plays an island. He casts a Search for Azcanta before passing to Roxy. Roxy plays a Tap Godless Shrine and has 3 mana for a Buried Alive. She goes to find 3 creatures to put into her graveyard, while Armin responds playing Growth Spiral. He draws a card and gets to put out a land, playing a Forest. This has Armin gaining another counter on his expedition. Roxy then puts into her yard a Karmic Guide, Reveillark, and Imperial Recruiter as she passes to Armin. Armin sacrifices his Misty, losing 1 to go and find a land. He grabs a Breeding Pool, losing 2 more to have it come in untapped, and puts a 3rd counter onto his expedition. Armin then moves to his main phase, playing a Forest, which has Pat putting out a land from Burgeoning. Armin then casts Tatyova and passes. Pat loses another 3 life to a failed Mana Crypt roll and draws for turn. He sacrifices the Verdant Catacomb that he'd put out earlier because of Armin's Growth Spiral. He grabs a Temple Garden, having it come in untapped and taking a total of 3. Pat then plays out a Verdant Bloom, which seems like spicy tech for Zacama. He upticks Garruk, untapping 2 lands, and floats some mana using appropriately colored dice to represent it. He has enough to cast Zacama, who on cast untaps all of Pat's lands, and he still has 1 white floating. Pat is then able to cast a Mana Reflection because lands tapping for 3 is fair and balanced. He taps a Forest for Wood Elves and goes to find a Forest card. It's a sweet miscut showing a forest and an island, and Pat passes. At the end of turn, Andrew uses his top once more. Andrew starts his turn, knowing what's on top, and doesn't bin it with the search trigger, and instead draws and plays an island. He pays 3 mana for Heuristic Study, passing to Roxy. Roxy draws, playing Smoldering Marsh, which comes in tapped, and she casts Faithless Looting. She draws 2 and discards 2. 2 mana then gets her a Demonic Tutor, and she goes to find a card. She pays the 1 for the study trigger that Andrew points out, and then passes after finding her card. On Armin's upkeep, before letting him go to the main phase, Pat activates Zacama to try and take out Tatyova. With the ability on the stack, Armin sacrifices the expedition and goes to find 2 basics. They come in, gaining him 1 life each and drawing him a card each. Tatyova then gets taken out, and Armin draws for turn. He plays a Lotus Cobra, and then plays out a Polluted Delta. This gives him 1 mana from the Lotus Cobra seeing the Delta enter, and then he sacrifices it to go and find another land. He grabs an island, gaining more floating mana. He then plays a Reclamation Sage, letting Andrew draw from the study trigger. The Sage comes in and blows up mana reflections on Pat's side. Armin then plays out Maloku and passes. Pat loses 3 again to his Crypt and draws her turn. He wants to draw more and puts to stack Arishkar's Expertise in his main phase, and will draw at least 9 cards if it resolves. Andrew isn't too keen on this, and limits Pat to drawing only 2 cards as he counters it with Arcane Denial. This gives Pat and Andrew a delayed draw trigger for Andrew's upkeep, and Pat then activates Zacama again in his main phase to take out the Lotus Cobra. Moving to combat, Zacama hits Andrew for 9, and Pat passes. Andrew gets his search trigger on his upkeep, and Pat draws 2. Andrew's looking at the card, and leaves it there, drawing it for the denial trigger. He also has 7 cards in his bin for the search, but since it's a May trigger, he doesn't need the land right now, so Andrew doesn't transform it. He then draws for turn, and casts Frantic Search, drawing 2 and discarding 2. He then untaps 3 lands as he resolves the spell, and plays it in Evolving Wilds, passing. Roxy drops a Swamp, and pays 2 for Animate Dead. She brings back the Karmic Guide, who enters, and brings back Reviarch with the Enter the Battlefield trigger. Sadly, Karmic Guide immediately goes back to the yard, as its protection from black causes the Animate Dead to fall off it. This has Liliana seeing a creature die, and transforms her, and Roxy gains a zombie token. Roxy then plays out Yahenni, paying the 1 to Andrew's study. Reviarch is then sacrificed to Yahenni, letting Roxy bring back the Karmic Guide and a Fiend Hunter. With the Fiend Hunter coming in, Roxy puts the Exile trigger on it onto Zacama, and has the Karmic Guide target Reviarch to bring it back. Pat responds to the second trigger hitting the stack, destroying his own Vernal Bloom with Zacama, so Armin won't get the benefit. Andrew also gets in on the action, bouncing Yahenni back to Roxy's hand with his copy of Disperse. Pat then surprisingly lets his commander get exiled to the Fiend Hunter. With all that then resolving, Roxy upticks Liliana, having the table discard a card. Before letting that ability resolve though, Armin casts Gush, returning 2 islands to hand, and drawing 2 cards, and then discarding 1. Armin draws for turn, and plays out an island. He pays 4 mana for a Soratami's Servant. He then hits Garruk with Maloku, and passes. Pat fails his Crypt roll again, losing 3 more. He casts a Comet Storm, where X is 3, and targets Roxy's Fiend Hunter. This has Andrew drawing a card from the study, while Armin activates the Servant to return a land to hand and tries to counter the spell. Pat decides to let it get countered, and once that's done, upticks Garruk to untap 2 lands, passing turn. Andrew uses his search, keeps it on top, and draws. He brings out Taigam in his main phase, and moves the Lightning Greaves onto his commander. Moving to combat, Taigam hits Garruk. In his post-combat main phase, Andrew then puts to stack a Serum Visions. He draws and scries 2, keeping one on top and bottoming one. The spell has rebound because Taigam attacked, so he puts it on top of his library as a reminder. Roxy untaps and recasts her Yeheni. She realizes the guide should be gone from the Echo cost, and then sacrifices the Reveillark so the guide won't be alone. This triggers the Reveillark's Leave Play ability, bringing back her Karmic Guide and the Imperial Recruiter, and with the guide entering, it brings back her Reveillark, and Roxy gets to go and tutor with the Imperial Recruiter. She grabs and puts to hand the classic Alesha finisher, Murderous Redcap, and she then plays a Mountain and casts the Redcap. Sadly, Armin doesn't have a counter in hand that exiles, and with the Redcap entering and Roxy's board state, she's able to loop through sacrificing the Redcap, the Reveillark, and the Karmic Guide to keep bringing back the Redcap to take all of her opponents out. Game review time. So I think Pat and Armin seem to have a battle going on that we weren't aware of because they certainly focused on each other enough. I will say that Pat probably deserved his a little bit more than Armin's, since playing out those mana doublers and having your commander with so many activated abilities is a great way to get you noticed. Andrew, unfortunately, while he did have a lot of card draw, seemed to be lacking in any kind of interaction. The only counterspell he was able to use this game was Arcane Denial, and we know that he had the foil in his hand, but unfortunately got wheeled away. I'm not saying that this would have saved them from Roxy's game-winning combo, because frankly, outside of something that allowed them to exile the card, it was very hard to interact with. They would have needed something like Stifle or Disallow on the Reveillark trigger to prevent the combo from going off, and even then, the deck is built in such a way that Roxy probably had another way or two in her hand of getting the creatures back. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.